The short winter day was waning when the Chelyabinsk train, 7 days out of Moscow, sluggishly passed the big stone erected in a defile in the center of the Ural mountain range, and which marked the geographical boundary of Europe and Asia. Since yesterday, when we had left the level plains of Eastern Europe for the uplands of the Urals, the pace had been tantalizingly miserable. Some people say that man can get accustomed to anything, but it absorbs an enormous amount of patience in getting accustomed to Russian railway traveling. The further eastward one goes, the slower becomes the pace, the longer the stoppages at insignificant stations, and the greater the demonstration beating of tin cans, blowing of whistles, and ringing of bells, which accompanies each arrival and departure. But now, with Europe behind, the whole wealth of Asia before one, combined with the uncertainty of the unknown, and which was backed up by popular prejudice and travelers' romantic tales, the thinking man has food for reflection, and much of it. We were rounding curves, sharp ones too, on a badly ballasted track that caused the heavy Russian cars to oscillate alarmingly, notwithstanding the crawl at which we were proceeding. The views to be obtained from the carriage windows were superb, in spite of the wintry aspect which everything bore. It was January time of deep snow, frozen rivers, and biting atmosphere. Everything around, except the interior of the car, was wintry to the last degree. Snow piled up in great drifts on the sharp spurs of the mountainside, the branches of the melancholy birches bowing down with the weight of their snowy covering, icicles hanging in the crevices of the rocks, where, in summer, splashed a mountain cascade. Deep below us, in a narrow gorge, lay the tortuous course of a fast-flowing river, but now frozen to its very bed, and its surface cut and streaked by the runners of many sledges. Now and again we could catch a glimpse of some woodman's hut perched up on the hillside, a veritable house of snow, and as cold and bleak-looking as anyone could think to see. Hurtling violently around the corner, we pass a level crossing, where stands a caravan of patient horses waiting to cross, with white frost hard on their shaggy coats, and icicles from their eyes and nostrils. A sheepskin-clad mujik, with fur hat over eyes and ears, and feet encased in huge felt boots, complacently puffing at a stunted papyrus. Here, too, an old woman comes out to flag the train, a woman who looks, from the amount of heavy clothing she wears, more like an animated beer barrel than a human being, and on whose stolid visage is nothing except an expression of tremendous importance at the position she occupies in the service of His Imperial Majesty, Tsar Nicholas II. Darkness fell. My 3 companions were asleep. The conductor came and inserted in glass boxes at each end of the long car 2 diminutive candle ends, the wicks of which he lighted laboriously. He looked at the thermometer to see how far off roasting we were, and then, after gazing superciliously around, left us. The heat in the car was fearful. Beads of perspiration stood out on the faces of my sleeping companions, and yet this is only the Russian way of doing things. The Rheomer glass outside showed 36 degrees below freezing point. Inside, the heat was sufficient to almost roast one, and thus for 7 days had we sat and lounged, talked and read, and stewed gradually, with no greater diversion than the rush for the buffet at each station, an occasional row with some blustering traveler who would hustle us for places, or the periodical breaking down of the locomotive, which event occurred about once a day, on an average. It was impossible to read, for the light in the car was so dim that one could scarcely see a couple of yards away. The train jolted and groaned and jarred, the candles flickered and guttered, people in the adjoining berths snored. A child was wailing dismally at the other end of the carriage. The heat became more intolerable, and I thanked heaven when, 2 hours after darkness had fallen, the creaking of brakes and the distant ringing of bells announced our immediate arrival at Chelabinsk, the terminus of the European system of the Russian state railways. The arrival of a train at a Russian station is attended with an amount of excitement which it is hard to associate with the usually stolid Russian. Particularly is this so in Eastern Russia, where railways are new and interesting. As the train slowly steams in, the assembled mob of sightseers and officials raise shouts of welcome. At least they seem to be. A man hard by the ticket office performs a terrific tintinnabulation on a large suspended bell. All the conductors blow whistles, while the locomotive siren goes off in spasmodic squealings. Slowly, but with many jerks and much grinding, the train comes to a standstill. But the passengers are not allowed to descend all at once. First of all, the engine driver must get off and shake hands with the first half-dozen men that happen to be hanging about near. no doubt receiving in return a sort of congratulatory address to the effect that he has got so far safely. Half a dozen gaily caparisoned policemen, in red hats with white cockades, and armed to the teeth with revolvers and swords, parade up and salute gravely. All the conductors get off there. Seems to be quite a crowd of them. All salute a red-hatted, despotic-looking individual who is gazing about with tremendous scorn and indifference, as if this sort of thing was very boring, although 10 to 1 his heart is thumping with pride and excitement, for he is the station master. Salary £100 a year. Princely for him, indeed. This individual, on thoroughly satisfying himself that beyond the possibility of the remotest doubt the train is really there, raises his hand as if he were about to pronounce a benediction, and instantly there belches from the heart of the mob a smaller mob of much bewhiskered men in white aprons. These are the porters. These gentlemen throw themselves upon the train in a frenzy of hurry, tear open the doors, push, scramble, and fall over each other in their endeavors to get in first, and ultimately disappear from view. The crowd outside grows silent in expectancy, but the racket which proceeds from inside the train tells eloquently that the porters are doing their fell work. The cars now begin to disgorge boxes and men, bundles and women, baskets and babies, everything mixed up, everybody talking. The crowd outside parts, and the crowd just outslides over the slippery platform in a hard mass to the buffet doors. These always open outwards, and are generally just wide enough for a thin man to get in sideways. Then the crush commences. You are in the middle of the crowd with a corner of a box in your ear and 4 men standing on your feet. You worm and edge your way out of reach of the box and run your chest against the side of a kettle, blacker than the blackest hat, and which is tied around the neck of an evil-smelling moujik in front of you. Somehow, the door gets open. The janitor inside scuttles, in order to prevent being swept off his feet. In we squeeze, and find ourselves in a long, whitewashed apartment, heated to a suffocating degree.